Welcome to the Your City Podcast, where we get to know our neighbors so that we can be good neighbors. I'm your host, Aaron Williams. And before we get to our guest today, we're going to say a thank you to this episode's sponsor, Southern Market. If you haven't checked out Southern Market in Gardendale, you are missing out. It's a small business locally owned by Brad and Rachel Hodges. They can custom cut any steaks and have the freshest meats around. They also carry vegetables, school pizzas, Crispitos, lots of spices, and local items. Their number one priority is quality and taking care of their customers, and you can find them on Facebook and Instagram, or stop by their grocery store at 621 Decatur Highway in Gardendale and check them out. I promise you won't be disappointed. All right, so today's guest is Mike Holmes, who is the franchise owner of the Gardendale and Fultondale Chick-Fil-As. He is on the board of directors at the Cornerstone Ranch, and we're going to talk to him about his involvement in the community, his journey to get there, and what is his favorite menu item at Chick-fil-A. Mike, thank you for coming on to the show.
Pleasure. Thank you for having me.
All right, so everybody wants to know, what is it? What's the favorite item?
My favorite item is no longer on the menu. We used to have a product called Chicken Q that was my favorite product.
I've never heard of that.
Yeah, it was a barbecue, shredded chicken barbecue back in the, 80s is when we had that. Very sloppy, messy product, which is why it's not on the menu anymore, but it was really good. My favorite menu item recently has been the grilled nuggets.
Yeah.
Trying to eat healthier, getting a little bit older, trying to manage blood pressure and cholesterol and those sorts of things. So I'm trying to make better choices. But I'm still, if I've got to choose and I'm throwing health out the window, I'm still going with the number one combo. Just the original Chick-fil-A sandwich and waffle fries. It's hard to beat.
The classic.
Yep, that's right.
All right. So you're originally from Marion, Alabama.
Correct.
Okay. So you've lived in Virginia, you've worked in Georgia, right?
Mm-hmm.
How did you end up in Gardendale?
Well, I grew up in Birmingham.
Okay.
Graduated from Huffman High School. So lived kind of in this part of Birmingham, for my younger years. And then left to go to college at Auburn after graduating from high school. And graduated, and my first job out of college was in Virginia. Lexington, Virginia, and lived up there for several years. And the company that I worked for, I was in human resources, and I was an assistant HR manager at this facility. And they had an opportunity for me to move to a facility in North Georgia to be the facility HR guy. And so it was a promotion, and it moved me closer back to home. So I moved there, and the plant was actually in North Georgia, and I lived in Franklin, North Carolina, which was 20 minutes up the road, and was there for several years, and things were going well. And they came in one day and announced that the plant was going to either sell or be shut down. So I spent about 18 months doing exit interviews on our employees as we continued to slowly shut the plant down. And that was a pretty difficult season. Really kind of made me question whether HR was what I wanted to continue to do, because it was, in college, we never really talked about workforce reductions. We talked about hiring people and sharing the benefits and all the great things about working in human resources.
Here's all the ways you're going to help people.
That's right. It was tough to go through emotionally because we had, entire generations of families that worked in that. It was a carpet manufacturing facility, and we had sons and moms and dads and grandparents, and I'm sitting across the table from these people, who are fixing to lose their job, but who really felt very hopeless and didn't know what was going to happen. I had death threats because, nothing against those people, they saw me as the messenger, and rightfully so. I guess I was the one that was delivering the bad news.
And probably they've been working there longer than you have. And
their entire lives. Most of them didn't graduate from high school. Had gone to work at the mill right out of, some of them while they were still in high school. Mm-hmm. Had somebody throw a brick through my window one night. Somebody took the lug nuts off the tire on my car, and it came off while I was driving down the road. It was just a tough time. And so at the end of that, we shut the plant down. At the last minute, a company came in and purchased the plant, but they brought in their own leadership team. And so I was laid off and moved back to Birmingham. And that's kind of when I started trying to figure out at age 30, okay, what am I going to do with the rest of my life as far as my career goes? Because I really had doubts about at that point about whether or not I wanted to be in human resources. And so
Yeah. Well, I mean, after going through a year and a half of that type of stress, it sounds like it could weigh on you.
it was,
I'm
yeah,
surprised you made it all the way through something like that.
it was very difficult, but I felt an obligation to stay there and try to help these people walk through this transition.
Yeah.
And thankfully, a lot of these people had no idea, but they'd been putting money in retirement, being deducted out of their paycheck for 40 years or whatever. And a lot of them had no idea the amount of money that they had in retirement. So that was kind of a nice surprise that I got to share with them. I'd sit down and go, okay, let's talk about what you have in profit sharing in retirement.
Yeah.
And that eased their mind a little bit. At least they knew that they had some financial stability that maybe they weren't even aware of. So that was helpful. But overall, it was a tough go. I have no regrets. It was a great learning experience for me as a young man,
Yeah.
and but it was a turning point career wise.
I could see that. Was living in Virginia or Georgia extremely different in your opinion to living in Alabama? Was there stuff that was over there that you kind of miss?
Yeah, same but different. I would say. My wife and I and our kids have traveled a lot over the last 12 years. We bought a motorhome and traveled all over the country, saw 44 of the lower 48 states in our motorhome. And the one thing that I would say is common is that despite what you might think, people are pretty much the same everywhere, especially if you get out of the major cities and just get out in the suburbs and
Hmm.
country. People are very much the same. And so there was a lot of similarity from the standpoint of what values were important to people. Roanoke was a beautiful city, absolutely beautiful. I've told my wife before, if we were forced to move from Birmingham or forced to move from Gardendale, I wouldn't hesitate to move back to Roanoke. It's just a beautiful place. And North Georgia as well, just great people.
Hmm.
I'd say the biggest difference between Alabama and say Virginia is what you would expect if you get outside the Bible Belt. It's interesting. People in up there, there's really no middle ground. You're a Christian and you go to church and you believe it and you live it 7 days a week, or you're not and you don't try to fake it. You don't go to church. I mean, if that's not what you believe, you don't do it just because it's kind of a society
There's
expectation or
a
whatnot.
deeper, a much more defined dividing line.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Other than that, though, I found there'd be great places to live. It was hard at first, just because I was 12 hours from home and single and didn't know anybody, but met some great friends that I still have to this day. So it was a great experience.
That's awesome. You talking about how people are different but the same and stuff like that. That's something that I've been trying to tell people is that most people want to be a good neighbor.
Hmm.
Most people are trying their best to be a good neighbor and be a good person and just kind of like help other people out as and take care of themselves and stuff like
I
that.
agree 100%. And I think you don't. I think one of the things that helped me with moving away
Yeah.
was a stronger appreciation for Alabama and for my home. I think, a lot of times growing up, you think, I want to get away from this town. I want to move somewhere else. And I found myself living in some of the places that I've lived, having a new appreciation for where I grew up. And
Yeah.
it made me appreciate coming back here.
Brian Knox and I talked a little bit about that. He was talking about, Gardendale has so much to offer. And one of the things that I said to him was that, sometimes people have to leave to realize what they want.
That's right.
They have to live without it to realize that's what
Yeah.
they need.
You don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And if that's all you know, then you can't appreciate it as
Hmm.
much. And that was really kind of my story with Chick-fil-A. I worked at Chick-fil-A here in Birmingham when I was in high school. Worked at the old Century Plaza Mall, which is no longer there.
Yeah, I remember that.
But I worked there when I was in high school and had one of my best friends work there with me. And actually, two of my really good friends that worked with me there, that two of us left after when we went off to college, we left and and really kind of left Chick-fil-A in a rearview mirror. Didn't really think about it as a career. And one of our friends stayed and went to school here in Birmingham, continued to work at Chick-fil-A, and then eventually became a franchise owner.
Mm-hmm.
And the other two, myself and the other fellow, we kind of went off and pursued a different career path. And then, kind of like what we've just talked about moving away and not appreciating something, I think it was when I got out into the quote real world that I realized that not every company was like Chick-fil-A, that not every company had the same values and focus on excellence and things like that. And so once I came back to Birmingham, I kind of reconnected with my old friend that was now a Chick-fil-A operator. And I remember going to lunch with him one day saying, man, I wish I had followed the same path you had followed. And, I feel like that was a missed opportunity there. He said, well, it's not too late. And I was like, well, yeah, I don't know. And so after probably a year of conversations and that sort of thing, he called me up one day and said, hey, you've been talking about this Chick-fil-A thing for a year now. It's time to fish or cut bait. And I was like, what do you mean? He said, at the time he had a store downtown Birmingham.
Mm-hmm.
He had Midtown Plaza is what it's called. He had that store and he had Eastwood Mall. And he said, I think they're getting ready to build a new store in Trussville. I think I've got a pretty good shot at getting it. And if I do, Eastwood Mall and Midtown Plaza are going to come open and you should apply for one of them and just see what happens. And so I did, and got selected and got Midtown Plaza. That was in 2000, and could not have been happier to be back with Chick-fil-A. I was 35, and when most people are probably settling into their careers, I was kind of starting over a new career.
Yeah.
But it just felt like home. I knew it was the right decision, and was at Midtown for 4 years. My wife and I lived in Inverness, was commuting back and forth up 280 every day. And we started.
That's no fun.
No, that was not fun. I tried to time my drive every day to get there, but to leave before the rush and get home before the rush.
Yeah.
But I remember during that period of time, my wife and I talking and about, if there would be another opportunity for me to move out of Midtown. It's a great store, but it's open Monday through Friday, 7 to 2:30. It's downtown. There's no drive-through. Just all walk up.
Mm.
And so I knew I'd be limited, as far as opportunity goes there.
Those are some 7 to 2. Is that
7 to 2:30 Monday through Friday? It's just right in the middle of the financial district, and
yeah? Those are some short hours.
yeah, there's really not much reason to be open much past that.
Yeah.
If you're downtown, where that location is. And so as we talked about, getting into a freestanding restaurant one day, potentially, we started talking about where we would, if we had that opportunity, where would we want to go? What kind of a community would we want to be in? Just praying very specific prayers about, we would love to be in a small town because we had young children at the time,
Mm-hmm.
and, a place where we could raise our kids and be involved in local, sports, and be involved in the community, with the stores, and really just get to know the people in the community. And strangely enough, there was a store that came open, or Chick-fil-A real estate started looking at building a store. And it was in a part of town that honestly, I couldn't envision us being there. It wasn't a bad part of town. It just didn't fit the criteria of what we'd been praying for. And so, we had some restless moments because I thought if they build that store, I will need to apply for that store. I mean, that's just kind of, you're not in a position to be that picky if you're looking for
Yeah.
an opportunity. And so we just continue to pray about it and say, God, if this is where you want us to go, then that's where we'll go. And
One of those strike while the iron is hot kind of
right,
things.
exactly. So about 2 months into that, real estate decided they were going to leave that deal on the table, that they weren't going to build that store there, which was a relief for us. And immediately following that, the real estate department started talking about building a store in Gardendale. And we were just elated because we knew enough about Gardendale to know this is where we want to be. This is where we want to raise our family, and we want to live in the community and
Mm-hmm.
make this our home. And so then the process of getting selected started, which is is pretty rigorous with Chick-fil-A. Took about 6 or 7 months, a lot of unannounced visits from corporate coming in and tasting the food and seeing what the experience was like at my current store and
At
that sort of
Midtown.
thing at Midtown. And after about 7 months, I got the phone call that we'd been selected for Gardendale.
Nice.
So we moved in 2004. We moved to Gardendale and opened the store in April of that year, and it's been great. It's been great. It's been everything we had hoped it'd be.
Awesome. Well, that's great to hear. That's a, really detailed and awesome story. When you're starting out, you said you moved back and your friend was like, "Hey man, just apply." What is that process like if for future franchise aspirees out there?
Yeah,
How do you do that?
yeah. Well, they've simplified it a lot since I started, but I mean, literally, you can go on Chick-fil-A's website and just click that you're interested in applying for franchise,
Hmm.
and then of course that's step one of about 1,000, but that is the first step. And for me, it was 6 or 8 months worth of interviews, going over to Atlanta, interviewing different people. Chick-fil-A is I've laughed before. I told people I think it would be easier to get hired by the Secret Service or the CIA than getting hired by Chick-fil-A,
Yeah.
because they're very selective, which feels great when you get selected, because you feel like, okay, this is an honor to get selected,
Yeah.
because the process is pretty rigorous. But at the time, I mean, it was. I've laughed before. I remember distinctly sitting in an interview, and at this point, I'm in my early 30s, and the interviewer asked me. She said, "Well, I noticed here on your credit record that you were late on a payment on a Shell card when you were 19." And I kind of laughed. I thought, I can't believe that it's that
Yeah.
detailed, that they're looking back that far. She said, "Can you explain what that was about?" I said, "Well, yeah, I was a sophomore in college, and if I paid my bills on time, it was a bonus. That one probably just slipped by." But I said, my credit's good." But that just kind of speaks to the lengths that they go to make sure that you've got the right character and the right chemistry, and that you fit with the values of the company.
What kind of things are they looking for?
Well, I think obviously an entrepreneurial drive is a big part of it.
Hmm.
The way the franchise is structured, it's not. There's a saying that is used pretty regularly in Chick-fil-A, and that is that you're in business for yourself, but not by yourself. So there's a great support system around you. Everything from IT to you name it. They're there and they're available. But they're not going to be looking over your shoulder helping you run the business. They want you to make those decisions for yourself. That's the reason they selected you to be the franchise owner, is so that you can make those decisions.
So there's a really deep amount of trust
Exactly.
placed into the hands of the franchise owners.
Exactly. Which leads me to the second thing that's really critical, and that's character. Integrity are just critical tenets of our company. It's very hard to get fired from being a franchise, to break that contract with a
Hmm.
franchisee. But if there are integrity issues, it's there's not a lot of grace. That's you can struggle with the operational part of it, and they'll provide you support to help you work through that.
Yeah.
And they realize that people are going to go through different seasons of life that are tougher, and they're great, just fantastic about supporting you through that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Not a lot of grace for character related issues.
I see that. I see. So for them, they're like, "Hey, if you're struggling and you need help achieving,
Hmm.
we're here to support you in those realms. But if you don't want to achieve, we're not going to help."
Right. And they're very patient with offering help and coming alongside. But obviously, at some point, if it's clear that your heart's not in it, it'll be time to go. And they know, and I know, and they know that there are 100,000 other people out there that would step into my position tomorrow.
Hmm.
There's no shortage of people that are applying to be a franchise owner, and I've joked often that I'm really fortunate that I got in when I did 22 years ago, because I don't know if I'd make the cut today. I mean, some of the caliber people that are applying to become a Chick-fil-A franchise owner today are people who are a lot smarter than I am, have a lot more business experience. We've got people who are CEOs of companies that are applying, former military that are
Yeah.
retired that are applying, and that sort of thing, that are really, really sharp people.
Well, Chick-fil-A has really come a long way in the last 20 years. I remember being, 10-year-old, maybe a teenager going to the mall and eating Chick-fil-A. And it's like, yeah, they're around, but
Hmm.
now it's like they're all over the place and everyone knows and recognizes the quality that Chick-fil-A is consistent with.
Yeah, yeah.
So they've come a long way with their reputation.
Yeah. When I started, we were a regional mom and pop type
Mm.
franchise, really. And I look back, and I think one of the things that really was a turning point was our vice president of marketing. It's probably been 15, 18 years ago. Entered into a partnership with ESPN, and that got our name all over the country, in places where we had not even ventured to go yet. But because of our partnership with ESPN, our name at least became a name that people recognized, if nothing else, from the commercials or the cows or something. And that's when we really started expanding as a company, and the growth has been it's been phenomenal,
Yeah.
and it's been even in the last 10 years, it's been. I would say that's one of the biggest challenges for me as an operator is the difference in capacity and learning to adjust to the changing climate within our industry. Obviously, in the last year and a half, 2 years with COVID and everything, it's been very challenging trying to navigate through that.
What's your approach to dealing with these challenges and maintaining your quality?
I think it really all of it for me comes down to people, and that's kind of the way I've always felt. That's why I went into human resources. I'm a big proponent that people are the differentiating factor between a successful business and a failing business. I
Mm.
really think it comes down to people. I'm blessed with an incredible leadership team, who take ownership in the business as if it were their own. And my directors, which are my top level people, I call them directors because it's short for board of directors, because I
Hmm.
feel like that's how I view them, as they're partners with me in the business. And they are really bright people who, and a lot of them have very different personalities than I do, and they challenge me in that regard. I tend to be a little bit more conservative, not a big risk taker.
Mm.
And thankfully, I've surrounded myself with some people in leadership who have a little bit more of that in them, and I trust them. So it's easier for me to follow their lead when they challenge me on some of these things, and
Yeah.
that was definitely at play, during the last year and a half. Things that I may not have been willing to attempt. They really kind of pushed me. They were like, "We can do this.
Yeah.
Trust us. We can do this." And so I've been very blessed with in that regard, and that's part of that. Really is a testament to this community, to the people that live out here. That
Hmm.
um, I hear a lot of stories from other Chick-fil-A operators who are in different parts of town or in other parts of the country, with the challenges they have with staffing and finding really good quality people who have good work ethic and understand the values of who we are as a company. And I can honestly say that's never been a problem since we've been here. We've been extremely blessed with some great people, built some great relationships over the years. I still see a lot of those. I call them kids, but they were that those people that have worked for me over the years. Some of the people that worked for me when we opened the store in 2004, who are now adults and married and
Hmm.
have children, and it's just a real blessing to be able to still maintain those relationships, and know that you played a small part in their development. When they were a teenager, or maybe showed them some grace for some of the stupidity that they showed when they were working for you. That you had patience with them to work through and kind of
Yeah.
help them become a better version of themselves.
That patience that you're talking about of allowing people to make mistakes and stuff like that, that is something that I was very thankful for in my early career as well. How much somebody taking the time to let me make the mistake
Hmm.
and let me learn from it, as opposed to getting angry about it.
Yeah.
That is something that really helped me out.
Yeah. It is. It's a tough thing for anybody growing up to kind of learn some of those principles, and obviously as a parent you have to kind of learn how to do that same thing. And so
Hmm.
the only difference is I'm parenting 200 kids instead of a handful.
Mm.
And but it's probably the thing that brings me the most joy in what I get to do. It's I love being with Chick-fil-A because of the values of the company, and because they do things with excellence, and that's how I want to do things. But if I had if it were the same company, if we had the same values but it was a different product, I would still love what I get to do because it's the people part that really
Yeah.
brings me the joy.
Do you have any future plans for Chick-fil-A? Any expansion plans?
I don't at the moment. Really, until about 3 years ago, 2 stores was the most that Chick-fil-A would allow one person to have,
Really?
and it was only in really rare instances that they would allow somebody to have three.
Interesting.
It's You would have to be able to make a case that they were all in the same trade area.
Mm.
You'd have to be able to show that the impact of that store opening would be pretty dramatic on your existing stores. Um, but they've opened up now. There are, I would say, less than 10 in a company with 3,200 stores. There are less than 10 people who have 3 stores, and I've thought about it. I don't know that there's anywhere close by where my 2 existing stores are that the real estate department would venture to build a new store in
Yeah.
the near future. And the real estate department decides all that. I mean, people have asked me before, say, I've got a piece of property and I'd like to open a Chick-fil-A on it. How do I do that?
Yeah.
And that's not how it works. Our real estate department does their due diligence. They find the sites that they like and they secure the property, build the store,
Hmm.
and then they select the person that's going to be the franchise owner. And so I'm very blessed to have 2 stores with 2 fantastic staffs. I don't know that I could get that lucky with 3 stores. Honestly, it would be hard to duplicate.
Is that the reason that they limit it to just two for most people?
Yeah, it's really the beauty of the franchise agreement is that you're limited into how many of the franchises you can own, but and by limiting how many franchises you can own, it kind of forces you to be focused, really hyper focused on those businesses.
Yeah.
Um,
It's a quality assurance method.
it is,
Yeah.
and and I think it's a protection for the franchisee as well because, um, I know this may come as a shock to some people, but it's really not that easy to run a Chick-fil-A restaurant. Restaurants in general.
What are you talking about? You just show up and you give them the chicken.
Yeah, yeah. I wish it were that easy. The restaurant industry is really it's a difficult business. Expectations continue to grow in our industry. There's a lot of things that are changing all the time, and you know, as a protection for the franchisee, I think they probably know that hey, two maybe three at the most is the most you can have and really run at a high level and keep your sanity.
Yeah.
And they Chick-fil-A's really focused on the mental health and physical health of their franchisees.
Yeah.
That's something they really um, preach a lot is making sure that you're taking care of yourself mentally and physically because it's easy to get burnt out. You can get sucked into the business and it's tough. You have to find a good balance there.
That right there is something that my sister and I were recently talking about, where she was saying, about her being a mom. She needed to take some time to focus on herself.
Mm-hmm.
And, the line of thinking was is like, if she fails, the kids will also fail.
That's
And
right.
that's kind of the same
Yeah.
thing where if you fail, the franchise will fail.
That's exactly right. And I have that same approach with my team. We don't do overtime. at our stores. And it's not because I'm trying to punish somebody and not pay them time and a half or whatever. I need these people to be healthy and balanced in their life, and I need them for the long haul. I mean, I know that the nature of my business is there are going to be a lot of people that are going to come and go, but I've got a core nucleus of leaders that I hope will be with me for their whole career.
Yeah.
And I need them as much 5 years and 10 years from now as I do today. And so I'm trying to be proactive with them to make sure that they have plenty of time off, and not working a lot of overtime. And, they know that if they end up dipping into overtime, they're going to have to answer to give me a good explanation of, hey, why'd you work 42 hours this week? I really want you to stay 40 or below, and I'll take care of you financially, but I can do that without you working overtime. And I think it helps. I think it, having time away from the business, no matter what business you're in, having some time away, having some balance in your life is really important to you being completely there and good for the people that you're working with. We're the same way with our high school team members. If they start struggling with school and we find out about it, they're coming off the schedule. They need to know that school, if you're a teenager,
Yeah.
or in college, then that needs to be your priority right now. And we want to help you make money. We know that it's expensive to go to school and pay your bills, but school is your priority. And, sometimes with a 16-year-old, they start working, get a little folding money in their pocket. And next thing you know, they're asking for more hours, and they want to, it's a nice feeling to have a little wad of cash. And then you get a call from a mom or a dad saying, hey, little Johnny is making all D's and F's in school this semester. And, we have to go to them and say, hey, you're off the schedule until you get your grades up. And it's just a matter of making sure that we're helping them in their development as young
That
people.
It's a beneficial relationship. It's not just you get all the value. You're making sure that the relationship works for Chick-fil-A and for the student.
Right.
And I think that's a very important thing to consider, is that, work is a means and it's not the thing to do.
That's right.
You want to work to be able to provide and help other people, but the end goal is somewhere else.
That's right.
And so making sure that, you're ensuring that the relationship between work and school is preserved. I think you're setting those kids up for, greater future successes. And like you're saying, you want them for the long haul, and you want them to have great experiences. And even if they don't stay with Chick-fil-A,
Right.
you want that character to be out there in the community somewhere else.
Right. Yeah. We've got a unique opportunity with a lot of the people that work for us. We know coming in that they're not going to be with us long term. And so there's a lot of different ways you can approach that, obviously, but our approach is we have a unique opportunity to invest in them and help them develop as young people so that they can be set on a road to be successful in life in whatever it is that they pursue, and be better citizens and be better husbands and wives and, fathers and mothers and
Be
that
better
sort of thing.
neighbors.
That's our better neighbors. Exactly. And so if we can, it's about understanding what your lane is, and our lane is, for 80% of the people that work for me, our lane is going to be to invest in them heavily during that period of time, help them learn good skills in working with a team, customer service, those kinds of things. No matter what career you may pursue, those are going to be hard skills that are going to help you be successful.
Yes.
And for employers, I can speak to this from my experience when I was in human resources. I can tell you that if I'm looking at two different resumes for somebody who's graduated from college and I'm interviewing them for my company potentially, and I see that one of these resumes has that young person worked at a Chick-fil-A, they're probably going to get the nod. At the very least, they're going to get an interview, because I know if they worked at a Chick-fil-A, there's a good chance that they had some skills taught to them that could potentially be a real benefit to my company. And so I try to communicate that with these kids when they're coming through is, hey, do a good job here so that when you take the next step to whatever it is that you're going to do, you've got that experience working here, and that's going to get your foot in the door at a lot of places that you may not get in otherwise. And so it's been fun, and watching my leadership team really embrace that and take on that kind of mentor
Yeah.
coaching role as opposed to a managing role, managing people, really coaching and mentoring people. It's a thrill to see it because they get it.
Yeah.
The lights come on for them and they get it.
Has your background in human resources helped you out in any other ways?
Yeah, I think it's like I said before, the people part of the business has always been the thing that's been most attractive to me. And I think we have to, when you own a restaurant, or really when you own any business, I think there's so many different hats that you have to wear. And there are, at least in our business, there are probably 5 things that I would say are what we call our critical success factors. So it's things like sales growth, financial return, quality of the food, customer experience, those kinds of things are all critical success factors. And we have to be conscious of those and identify where we are, be aware of those things, any areas that need to be improved. But I think it's safe to say that for all of us, we kind of have a default filter that we kind of like that part of the business is really my favorite. That's what really gets me going.
Yeah.
And so people being that for me, that's the filter that I run my decisions through. So if we're talking about an investment in a new piece of equipment, or if we're talking about, for example, if we have a new product rollout, which we have, every year there's a new product rollout, either it's being added to the menu or that maybe we're doing for a limited time only. Well, when that new product's coming out, my first thought is, how's this going to impact our team? How are we going to train them? Is this going to add undue burden to them, to the kitchen, to the speed of service, that sort of thing? How's it going to affect our people? Well, some other guy may have a completely different point of view. He may look at it from the standpoint of, hey, this is a great opportunity to really bolster our sales. So I'm going to really promote this product like crazy because I think it has an opportunity to really grow our sales.
And that's that conservative perspective that you
Right.
have balanced with,
Yep.
the opportunity perspective others have.
Yeah. So the people part really is twofold. Obviously, it's your team, but it's also the guest. And so I'm thinking about that too. I'm thinking about, okay, if we've got a new product, I want to make sure that the guest knows what's in it, that they don't order it if it's ultimately not something that they would want. I want to make sure that they know what they're getting, that they have a good experience. So my filter goes toward the people part of it. And other people, I mean, I've got some friends who are very profit-minded geniuses, really. And those guys with a new product rollout are probably looking immediately to see, hey, what's our profit margin on this product? Because I may promote it really heavily if there's a big profit margin, or I may not promote it at all if there's a small profit margin.
Yeah.
It's funny how in business, or at least in our business, that the profit margin piece is so varied between products. For example, we have a seasonal peach milkshake, that comes out in the summertime. Well, we make zero profit on the peach milkshake. Our cost and the cost that we sell it to the public is virtually the same. And then you have unsweet tea that is a huge profitable product. And so I've just never been somebody, maybe it's because I'm not a numbers person or into like nitty gritty details, but I just don't, my mind just doesn't go there when I'm thinking about that sort of thing. I'm thinking, what's the impact on our team going to be? And so from an HR standpoint, to go back to your original question, yeah, I feel like that my experience in HR helped me with understanding the importance of how we treat people, the importance of having relevant benefits for our team. And we spent a lot of time talking about that. We have a culture team at both of our stores. It's kind of a cross section of team members, managers, team leaders, directors, just kind of a cross section, new people, more tenured people. And the whole purpose of that team is to come up with ideas on how do we continue to maintain and improve the culture of the business. And one of the aha moments for us last year was that we did an employee survey, and one of the things that came out of the survey was that a higher percentage of people than I would have expected said that they didn't feel like we had good benefits. And that was kind of eye opening for me because I have a 401k plan that I match up to 4%. We have free health insurance, life insurance, college scholarships, all these different things that I thought, hey, that's a pretty robust benefit plan. But what we found out through the culture team, asking people questions and getting feedback, was those are great if you're an adult working full time. But for a 17-year-old, I'm not interested in 401k. That's not on my radar right
That's
now.
wasted money.
Yeah, I'm on my parents' health insurance, so that means nothing. I don't want life insurance because I'm never going to die. You know, when you're 17, you think you're going to live to be 100.
You were reading those to me. I was like, man, I got to go work at Chick-fil-A. But you're right. To a younger person, it's like that stuff doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. So we really kind of had to pivot last year and get some ideas on, hey, what would be some great benefits? And, you know, what's funny is some of the things that they came back with, I would have at 57 years old, I would have never thought of it. I mean, one of the things they said was, we'd love to have a snack bar at the store that has like M&Ms and gummy bears and Skittles.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you're kidding, right? And they're like, no, that would be great if we had that. So somebody from the culture team would drive to Costco once a month and load up on candy and set it up in the store, and it was great. I mean, they loved it.
Everybody had a wonderful reaction to it, and
Yeah,
everybody's happy now.
yeah. And I'm thinking, hey, I'm feeding y'all free Chick-fil-A. I didn't know that you'd want to eat anything else, but you know, you don't know if you don't ask.
Yeah.
And a lot of times people are kind of leery of doing those employee surveys because they may not want to know what they're going to find out.
Well, if you don't measure it, how can you improve it?
That's right. That's right.
That
And
is
so we've
something.
learned a lot, and the HR background has helped with just, I guess, just because I realize that of all the aspects of any business, to me, the people are they're the critical cog in the wheel.
Yeah.
And if we can build the right environment, find the right people who want to be associated with something that's bigger than them and wants to learn and grow, then we'll be successful. All the rest of the things will kind of take care of themselves. And
I think that's a great perspective.
and we've been very fortunate because a lot of the parents in this community want their kids to work at Chick-fil-A.
Yeah.
They believe that, and rightfully so, that we're going to reinforce the same values that they're teaching at home if they come to work there. And so those are the parents of the kids who I want working for me. Yeah, I want those parents who are involved in their kids' life, who are engaged and who are teaching them manners, you know, saying yes, sir, and no, sir. You know, it's hard for me to take on a 16-year-old and raise them, but I love building on what mom and dad are already doing. That's fun.
Yeah, helping sort of reinforce that. And
Yeah.
you know, when just hearing all of this, the amount of trust that Chick-fil-A is giving their franchise owners, it sounds like that you are also giving a large amount of trust to the team to sort of like keep things running and make quality decisions on your behalf.
Yeah, and that's been a process. You know, when I was at Midtown, like I said, we were 7 to 2:30 Monday through Friday. I had, I think, 12 employees, and I was the franchisee of record, but I was also the guy that was breading chicken and cutting and squeezing lemons and taking out the trash and sweeping them up in the dining room and that sort of thing. And so that was my beginning point as being an operator. And then I came to Gardendale, a lot more volume, a lot more moving pieces. You add a drive-through into the mix.
More hours.
A lot more hours. You know, just the drive-through itself is a whole nother animal that I had to learn. And it didn't take me long to realize I've got to have some really strong leaders here to help me. And then Fultondale opens in 2008. I realized maybe even though I didn't think I was still micromanaging at Gardendale, I was still micromanaging at Gardendale. But I can't be two places at once. So really had to reinvent myself, so to speak. And it was a little bit of a crossroads for me because having to learn how to delegate things
Mm.
when when you kind of feel like, hey, this is my baby. This is my identity. Which for men, we tend to do that sometimes. Our job is our identity, and am I really going to trust people
Mm-hmm.
to do this? And so it's there's been some growing pains with me learning to do that, because finding the balance between handing that stuff off and still staying engaged in what's going on in the business it's hard to do.
Yeah.
And, managing the personalities of the stores, it's funny. My stores are literally 4 miles apart, door to door. Could not be any more different as far as the personalities of the leadership team, the markets that we're in. Gardendale is very much a community store. We see a
Mm-hmm.
lot of the same people every day. We know our guests by name. We know their dogs. It's a very close knit community. Fultondale is a very transient store by nature. We have easy access off the interstate.
Yeah.
It's just a different feel altogether, and so I have to run it. I mean, it's almost like raising kids. You can have I have two children, a daughter who's 22 and a son who's 19, and they could not be any more different in their personalities and that sort of thing. And so it's a little bit the same way with our business, with my business. It's treating them on their own individually with their personalities, their quirks, their strengths, and so I've had to lean heavily on our leadership team to walk me through that, and I think it really comes down to finding the right people that you can trust,
Yeah.
and that's how I feel with our leadership team, is that I would trust them with anything, and I certainly trust them with my business, and I know that they have great integrity, and that they're very loyal. And I'm kind of the mindset that I'm going to trust you until you give me a reason not to.
Mm-hmm.
And they've been great, very blessed.
Well, that's good. Well, you're also a member of several organizations. You're the Well Digger Society.
Hmm.
Can you just sort of explain what the Well Digger Society is?
Yeah, I'd love to. So about 15 years ago, I was invited by a friend of mine to go to South Dakota to pheasant hunt,
Okay.
and had never pheasant hunted, didn't really know what it was about, but went out there and had a really, what I would, not to over dramatize it, but I had a life changing experience. It was just this incredible week, and part of what made it different, the bird hunting was fantastic. I mean, that
Mm-hmm.
part of it was really unbelievable. It was like nothing I'd ever done before. But what made it unique and special was the organization that put on the hunt, which is called Fellowship Adventures. And what sets them apart is they are a Christian based hunting organization. Or at least that's what they are on paper. What it's really about is connecting men and getting them out unplugged from their work and getting out into nature and connecting with God and connecting with other men in that
Mm-hmm.
kind of environment.
Yeah.
And for 15 years, I've been going out there and I've been taking friends and having them experience that same thing. And it's just an amazing week, and look forward to it every year. My wife looks forward to me going every year because she knows when I come back, I'm going to be re-energized and
Mm-hmm.
refreshed. I'm going to be a better husband. And there is a organization within Fellowship Adventure called the Well Digger Society,
Mm-hmm.
and the Well Digger Society is a group of individuals who have a heart for Fellowship Adventure, and also have a heart for giving, for seeing other men be able to have these experiences. And so a lot of the men that come out there on these trips are pastors or lay people who are in ministry of some sort, and may or may not have the resources to make a trip like that.
Mm-hmm.
But they probably need that as much or more than anybody. I mean, some of these pastors are wearing, especially in some smaller churches, I mean, they may be wearing 30 hats. They're doing hospital visitations, and they're, preaching on Sunday and Wednesday night, and making hospital visits and all these different things, and dealing with people, counseling people and dealing with really heavy stuff. And what Well Digger Society does is provides scholarships and the resources for men like that to be able to come out and have that experience.
How can somebody get involved in the Well Digger Society?
Well, it's the best way to go is to get involved with Fellowship Adventures. I mean, that's they have a website. We actually have kind of a couple of different arms. We have the pheasant hunting, and there are 10 or 12 trips a year that we take and
Mm-hmm.
stay at a lodge out there, and it's just a fantastic week of eating and fellowshipping and sitting out by the fire. And so there's the pheasant hunting trips, and then we have a lodge in Nebraska where we do turkey hunting and deer hunting. Similar type experience, just a different type of hunting.
Just a different bird.
But yeah, that's it. And then we do fishing trips in Canada.
Yeah.
And so, but the website, fellowshipadventures.com is a great resource to find out more about it, especially if that's something that you're interested in. It's I've taken a lot of friends, and I try to be pretty selective about who I take, because it's important that people understand that the bird hunting is fun. It's a great experience watching the dogs chasing birds and flushing them and shooting and all that sort of thing.
But it's not about hunting.
It's about fourth or fifth on the list, really.
Yeah.
The fellowship and the connection is really what makes it different. And for the last 2 years, I've been able to take my son, which is just taking it to a whole nother level.
Yeah.
Getting to experience that week with him now.
It sounds like it would create some lifelong friendships.
It has because there's a core group of guys that have been going on this trip for as long as I have, and we live all over the country. And we may not get to see each other at all except for that 1 week, but we stay connected throughout the year, praying for each other, encouraging each other, because a lot of us are involved in different businesses and different ministries, and we just try to hold each other up and encourage each other to hang in there and keep plugging with what they're doing.
Yeah. So you started taking your son. He's obviously getting old enough to do that. I had heard from Kathleen Phillips that y'all chose to homeschool your children.
We did.
What inspired that decision?
Yeah, that's I'll try to condense the story as much as possible, but
Yeah, sure.
yeah, I came home when our daughter was very young. I came home one day and told my wife, I said, how do you feel about homeschooling? It was just kind of a random thought. It'd been on my mind, and I came home and mentioned it. My wife, just to give you some context, we were both married for the first time a little bit later in life. I was 33, she was 34. She had a very successful career in medical sales. So when I mentioned homeschooling to her, I got a look that I'd never seen before, and it was not a good look. She was pretty clear about me not ever bringing homeschooling up again. She didn't feel like that was something that she had the qualifications to do or an interest in doing. So I never brought it up again. I'm a smart man. And so fast forward, we're in Gardendale. Came home from work one day. My wife said, I think I want to homeschool. And I said, really? Okay. Well, tell me more about that. Well, it was a combination of several things. First of all, we had a young man that worked for us at the Gardendale store named Micah Harris, who is now a Chick-Fil-A operator in Sylacauga. Great kid. Came to work for me when he was 16, and he was homeschooled. And he just stood out. And a lot of the stereotypes that we had about homeschool kids, he shattered. I mean, He was very sociable. He was well adjusted. He could interact with adults, kids, peers. It didn't matter. And he was really smart and just a great kid. And my wife had been watching him at work, and she was really impressed with him. And at this point, Zachary my son was getting ready to go into first grade. And my daughter was getting ready to go into fifth grade. And our kindergarten teacher had mentioned, hey, I think Zachary may have ADHD, maybe some dyslexia. Just putting that on your radar to be aware of it. So all this was kind of part of the conversation. Then we get to first grade, and his first grade teacher, who is Kathy Cassidy, Bill's wife, Kathy told us the same thing. She said, hey, I don't know if you know this, but Zachary may have a little ADHD. So the more we started talking about it, we were actually talking about pulling him out to homeschool. And we started doing some research and talking to some people, talked to Micah's mom, and she was pretty clear. I mean, everybody that we talked to said, look, if you're going to homeschool one of your kids, you're going to want to homeschool both your kids. I mean,
because you've got your schedule already
mhm.
set up to take, if you're doing one kid, to take them to school, to pick them up from school, to take them to activities and all that sort of stuff. It does make sense to have that schedule for one and not the other, because you're creating two schedules.
Yep, and that's exactly where we landed. So we talked with both the kids about it, and they were like, "Hey, let's do it. That's great." Of course, I think at that point they're thinking, "Hey, I don't have to get up and go to school every day. That's a win." And so my wife, in her typical fashion, was not going to just settle for picking any kind of homeschool program. She went out and did her research, and she came across a curriculum called Classical Conversations, and it's a classical school approach
Hmm.
to teaching, a lot of Latin and different things like that. And there was a classical conversations group over in Hoover, and so she contacted them. She's like, "I'll drive them, over there. It's one day a week,
Hmm.
you." So she called them, and they said, "Yeah, we've decided we're not going to do that this year, but maybe you should start one." And my wife loves a challenge, so she brought the Classical Conversations campus to Gardendale and
Hmm.
started it. And the way it works is you teach your kid 4 days a week, and then one day a week they come together in a classroom setting with other kids who are in that same curriculum. And you have a tutor, one of the moms that has a gift for teaching, that comes in and teaches that one day, and it helps build some social skills and getting them interacting with other homeschoolers and that sort of thing. And
Yeah.
so we jumped in deep in the pool, and every year we would ask the kids, "Hey, do you want to homeschool next year, or do you want to go back to public school?" And it was really, there was never a question at that point. Every year it just was a no brainer for our kids. They wanted to do it. And then about 4 years in, Jan got interested in making sure she really became convicted and passionate about trying to maximize the homeschool experience for
Hmm.
kids. So she started doing a homeschool prom, and then decided to add a sports league for homeschool. So she
Yeah.
created a sports league called Legacy Sports, and we had boys and girls basketball, girls volleyball, and boys baseball. Traveled all over the state because we were playing either other homeschool groups, which there weren't very many that had sports programs. Mostly we were playing private Christian schools.
Hmm.
And so we were traveling all over the country. I mean all over the state. I remember driving to Dothan on a Tuesday to play a basketball game, and then driving home after the basketball game, and that was kind of the nature of that. But
Yeah.
became an incredible avenue for the kids that were in our program.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we've had this last year, we had two of the girls that were on our volleyball team that both got volleyball scholarships to college, and it's been really neat to see the community that has been built around homeschooling. And Gardendale is a great community for homeschooling. There are a lot of parents, and Classical Conversations continues to grow, and there are hundreds and hundreds of families now in the
Wow.
Birmingham area that are part of Essentials
You guys started
Homeschool.
something.
Yeah, and so now our kids are out of high school. Our daughter graduated from Auburn in 2019. She challenged me to pursue a master's degree with her, and so last fall a year ago, she and I enrolled at Liberty University, and we're getting a
Yeah.
master's degree together, and
That's
that's
where
been a lot
Draper
of
went.
fun.
You know
Yeah,
Draper
yeah,
Rogers? He
yeah.
went to Liberty
How about
University.
that? Yep.
Yeah.
So that's been a lot of fun. She and I are very much alike in our personalities. Very competitive, which has been fun with us taking the same program at school.
Oh, so
Going through
she's
that.
taking the exact same thing?
We're both getting the same degree.
What is this degree?
It's called Christian Apologetics.
And what is that?
Well, the Greek word for apologia, which is where you get apologetics, the Greek word for that is to defend.
Okay.
And so apologetics essentially addresses the challenging parts of the Bible
Okay.
and helps answer those questions so that you can be equipped to answer those questions. So things like the problem of evil in the world. If God is a loving God, how can he allow bad things to happen on earth? Those are tough questions that we all have to wrestle with, whether
And
you're a person of faith or not.
that type of stuff can be can break a person's
Hmm.
convictions and faith.
Absolutely. And
That stuff can be
that's,
really,
dealing
really
with,
powerful.
some of the things in the Old Testament, the story of Abraham and Isaac, where God tells
That's a hard
Abraham,
one.
take your son up and sacrifice him. There are a lot of people who would really struggle with that, and a lot of Christians who really struggle with that, or either choose to just not deal with it. And I just I love being better educated and being better equipped to be able to maybe counsel somebody through something like that, or kind of
Mm-hmm.
walk with them through it. It's helped me cement my faith, just addressing those
Yeah.
things. In all honesty, I was probably not the greatest student when I was at Auburn,
Mm-hmm.
or in high school for that matter. I was kind of that classic C student who really didn't apply themselves a lot. So for me, a little bit of the going back and getting this master's degree was a little bit of a self challenge to see, hey, if you really apply yourself, could you be a good student?
Mm-hmm.
And so that was a little bit of my motivation of going back, and then the apologetics degree. It was going to be
Yeah.
either apologetics or theology, and I just really felt like in the end apologetics was going to be more applicable to me on a daily basis.
What's your intent with this? Are you going to use it for anything, or is this just like ammunition for church conversation?
A little bit of both. For sure, it's stuff to have in my tool belt for having conversations with people who might be having a crisis of faith, or maybe just struggling with that. Because, like you said, this could be a decision maker for some people. They may decide whether or not to accept Christianity as their faith based on an issue that they have about, an alleged discrepancy in the scriptures.
Yeah.
Something that they may just not be able to get past it. And I firmly believe that all of these issues have solid answers to them, and that's part of what I've learned through this program. But I think I would love to teach. I feel like a lot of what I do now with young leaders is
Mm-hmm.
teach, and help coach them and mentor them. And our church has a ministry school called Highlands College,
Okay.
and I graduated from the evening program at Highlands College 2 years ago. And I've kind of kicked around, I might try to apply for uh, an opportunity to teach there at Highlands College. We've been very involved at Highlands College for years, and I love the vision that they have, and I think it would be fun to maybe teach there. But I don't know. It's not something that I felt like, hey, I have to get this degree because I have a plan on the backside of this that
Yeah.
requires it. But
It's mostly just an interest that you were wanting to pursue,
right,
maybe not for any career applications, just because it's something that you're interested in.
yeah. But if it presents an opportunity, to do something like that,
Yeah.
it would.
Well, the amount of knowledge you have is going to open up more opportunity and give you access to more solutions. So,
Yeah, yeah. I hope so. Um, but it's Chick-fil-A is we have in our franchise agreement, we have to agree to not have any other revenue generating occupation. So if I do teach, it would be, a pro bono type thing, where I'm just doing it because I enjoy it.
yeah.
I don't necessarily see myself leaving Chick-fil-A to go teach, but who knows? I don't know.
Who knows
I
what the
wouldn't have
future
said 5 years ago that I'd be getting a master's degree either. So I'm trying to stay open to whatever God has in store for the rest of my life, however
Yeah.
long that's going to be.
Well, you got Chick-fil-A going on, 2 locations. You've got a Well Digger Society, trips all the time, and
The
your
master's
master's
degree.
degree. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you've also got another thing, Cornerstone Ranch. How do you balance all of these different tasks?
Yeah.
How do you find the time
Yeah.
for that?
Well, I think first you have to learn how to say no to some good things. I know I'm not naive. I know that because I'm with Chick-fil-A, that provides me a platform that I wouldn't have otherwise. In other words, I might get asked to be on some committees or boards or something like that. not because of anything I've said or done, but because I'm associated with Chick-fil-A. And so that provides me some great opportunities. There's great opportunities at church and within the community that that I could say yes to. And I've been in a position before not that long ago where I did say yes to everything, and I found myself overwhelmed
Mm.
with things that in some cases I really wasn't that passionate about. And I asked myself, am I really doing them any favors by me being a part of something that I'm not really passionate about? So I had to learn how to start saying no, and then kind of backing into what are the things that I really am passionate about that I feel like I want to be a part of for the rest
Yeah.
of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And Cornerstone Ranch was 100% one of those type things.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, in 2007, we'd been living in Gardendale for a couple of years, and a mutual friend of mine introduced me to Rusty Rouse, who was one of the founders of Cornerstone Ranch. At that point, they had just recently purchased the property and had a vision for what they wanted to do out there, but that's about all we had. But Rusty took me in his pickup truck and we rode around out at Cornerstone Ranch on that property. And for about 2 hours, he just poured out his heart and shared with me the vision that he had to reach kids with the gospel in an outdoor environment like that.
Yeah.
And he really just stirred my soul. And I said, man, I don't know what it is that you need me to do. It may be run a weed eater or a lawnmower or whatever. Maybe you just want me to feed lunch to the campers. Whatever it is, I'm in. I want to be a part of this. And so Cornerstone launched. Rusty and the other founders, Josh and Jake, asked me if I would be on the board, and it's just become, something I feel incredibly passionate about. I love what God's doing out there. It continues to grow. We've got a full-time staff person now that's able to help with a lot of the responsibilities that we as business people and members, family people, our time is limited. And so having somebody on staff has really helped us elevate to the next level. We're in the process right now of developing a junior board that's really going to help. I think from a balance standpoint, it's about just learning how to manage your time really well and be disciplined with that. I've got every week I'm kind of designating, okay, this is my school time.
Yeah.
And with being on the chamber, I know when those meetings are going to be. I know how to allocate my time for those sorts of things, and just making sure you don't allow yourself to get overwhelmed. The school thing I know is for a season. I'll graduate in the spring, and then I'll kind of reevaluate and say, okay, of the things that I'm involved in now,
Mm-hmm.
how many of these things do I want to continue doing? I know that I'll roll off the board, the chamber board, at the end of next year. So that'll open up some time potentially. I mean, if I feel like I've got some good balance in my life at that point, when those things roll off, then I'll, be open to other opportunities, or maybe see if there's something else that I really want to pursue. Maybe,
Mm-hmm.
maybe more school. I don't know. But I think the key to it though is identifying the things that you really are passionate about. And being willing to say no to those things, and you're not going to hurt somebody's feelings. I think most people would rather you say no than to say yes when you're only going to
With
be
half a heart.
half-hearted in it,
Yeah.
yeah, and really not bring a lot of passion and enthusiasm to it. So it's
Well,
hard though. It's
yeah.
really hard.
I
We became empty nesters in January, so that freed us up a little bit as
yeah.
far as managing our time. But it's managing not just all those other elements, but also time with your wife and making sure that she doesn't feel like she's a second class citizen, and that you're I know a lot of men who are busy doing a lot of things and not spending as much time at home, and I don't ever want to be that guy. I've got people in my life to help hold me accountable, to make sure that I'm keeping that balanced as well, because that's the most important thing.
Yeah. I think so. So you mentioned Cornerstone Ranch and you talked a little bit about what inspired you there. How do you guys go about ensuring that Cornerstone Ranch is staying on its mission, is accomplishing its mission and sort of staying true? How do you guys ensure that?
Yeah, I think that, when we first started, back in '08, I had just spent some time with a life coach. I was kind of going through this transition that I was mentioning earlier about going from having one store to two stores and delegating and that sort of thing. Well, about 2 years in, I walked in the stores one day, went to Gardendale and spent some time, and then I went to Fultondale and spent some time, and I drove home, and I told my wife when I got home, I said, I don't know what my job is anymore. I mean, I went to the stores today, everything's running fine. I don't know what my purpose is. And it really, it sounds silly, but I really did have a little bit of a troubling time thinking, okay, what's my role?
Sounds like a good problem to
I
have.
know. And so when you tell people that, they're like, stop your whining. I don't, is that not what you were working for? Um, but I decided to enlist some help with a life coach. And that was money well spent. This guy, I talked with him on the phone every 2 weeks. He was actually in Oregon, so I never met him face to face, but we
Mhm.
talked on the phone every 2 weeks, and he would give me assignments and stuff to work on. And one of the things that he gave me as an assignment was to write a vision statement for myself,
Yeah.
and so he sent me a lot of materials that kind of helped me develop a vision statement. And so it was about that time after I'd gone through that practice and that exercise with him that we started talking at Cornerstone about we really need a clear vision statement about who we're going to be,
Yeah.
because we had kicked around a lot of different ideas. We knew that we wanted to help kids. We knew that we wanted to create an environment that was conducive for sharing the gospel and for them to have a great experience, catching a
Yeah.
fish and riding a zip line and those sorts of things. But we
All this passion, but no direction.
Yeah, we kicked, we talked about, do we do it for special needs kids? Do we do like therapeutic horseback riding, or, what does that look like?
Hmm.
And so we spent some time, did a little weekend retreat, spent some time and went through that exercise of developing a vision statement. And that's where we, identified, that we want to use an outdoor experience to reach kids with the gospel. And so coming off that vision statement, really putting some things in concrete about how we were going to go about doing that. And honestly, at the time, sometimes circumstance kind of helps dictate what that looks like. And at the
Hmm.
time, for us to have created a therapeutic horseback riding or to do something for special needs kids, frankly, financially, we just couldn't afford to do that. There were so many ADA requirements and different things like that involved that it was just not something we could do. And so, using that vision statement is, when we talk about that in our board meetings and having conversations, it's always going back to that. It's always, we filter everything through that vision statement to make sure that we're staying on track, because it's easy to get, honestly, it's easy. I mean, with an opportunity like what we have, we're very blessed. We've got 1,200 acres and several lakes,
Yeah.
and we just kind of have to hold each other accountable and have those hard conversations, because sometimes, you know, being heard, if you've got an idea, is really important. But it's also important that if it's not the direction we need to go, that you're not going to pout, that you're going to get on board, put on your big boy pants, and let's move on to the next thing. And we've had such a long run together with these guys that we don't get our feelings hurt. We just make sure that the cornerstone is the most important thing, and that the kids that we're trying to reach, maintain that we keep that the main focal point of what we're
Hmm.
trying to accomplish, and we keep each other reeled in. So but sometimes, it's, we take a flyer. I mean, that's one of the things that we did about 5 years ago that really has changed the ability that we have to reach more kids, is we started having day camps during the summer,
Okay.
because our primary mission is to reach what we call kids in need, kids that maybe don't have the greatest situation. Bring them out and spend the weekend with them, and that is our primary goal, is to reach those kids. And that could mean anything. That could be, kids from a divorced home. It could be kids from the inner city. It could be, any number of things fall under the definition of a kid in need.
Hmm.
Could be, in some cases, social disorders. Um, but we were doing those on the weekend, and with our bunkhouse, we could have about 12 or 14 kids max. So we were kind of limited on how many kids we were being able to reach on any given summer. And so Dalton Moore, who's our staffer, who had grown up coming to Cornerstone and being involved out there, presented us the idea of having these day camps where parents would drop their kids off Monday through Wednesday from 9 to 3,
Mm-hmm.
and we would have a similar type experience. Do all the same kind of activities and that sort of thing, and present the gospel to them in a fun and relevant way. And it would be a fee-based camp, and that thing is just taken off. And it's not only is it provided a source of revenue for Cornerstone. So
It's also, it sounds like, extremely aligned with that vision statement that you were talking
it
about.
is, and we're being able to reach. I mean, I think we had 500 and something campers this year. So we're being able to reach a lot more kids because they're not spending the night. They're being dropped off in the morning, picked up in the afternoon.
Yeah.
And obviously, with any nonprofit, raising money is a challenge. And we've rubbed and sold thousands of Boston butts over the years in an effort to raise. We might work all weekend and raise $1,000 selling Boston butts. That's what you do when you have a nonprofit.
Yeah.
And the day camps have obviously been a great revenue generator for us, and it continues to align with our mission of reaching kids. So it's been a win.
I think that tactic of the vision statement, it's similar to something that we've done before in my industry. I do design work, and back when I used to work at EBSCO, one of the things that we would do is like, hey, whenever we're designing an application like software, that application needs to have a North Star. There's a problem that this application solves, and that helps you prevent scope creep. We refer to it as scope creep,
Yeah.
where it's like, oh, hey, while we're doing this, we could also do this, and we could also do that, and we could all.
Yeah.
You get you get all of these features that nobody really wants, right? So that North Star design, this is the problem we're solving. Helps keep everything else that gets plugged into that aligned. I think that's a great tactic.
Yeah, that's a great example. That's a great analogy to help paint that picture.
Yeah. Uh, what are some ways that people who are inspired by what you're doing at Cornerstone Ranch, how can they get involved?
Yeah, again, and in the world we live in, it's all about the website, and we've got a website, mycornerstoneranch.org, and it's we have work days where we have people come out and help us doing work projects. We've got on the website, there's a list of projects or things that we have needs for. If if you the end of the year and you're looking to make a donation for a tax write-off, you want to do a donation to a nonprofit, there are things that need to be bought, canoes and life jackets and all those sorts of things. For young people, we're always looking for quality young people to come out and be camp counselors during the camps that we do. Dalton is a great source, and his information is on the website as well. But and like I said, we're in the process of assembling a junior board, and
Yeah.
and the purpose of that is to find people who are passionate about what we're trying to do. They can come alongside that maybe have a special skill set. Maybe it's social media or fundraising or event planning. Those kinds of things. Those are the kind of people we're looking for to develop our junior board, so that they can help us with growing. We know that we're just like anybody. We're going to have some capacity challenges as we try to grow and make this place better. And the best way to combat that is to bring on some great people who are passionate about what you're doing to come alongside and help you execute your mission.
Yeah. What is something that you love about Gardendale?
I could go on for a while, but I think for me, the first thing that comes to mind is the quality of the people that live here. Very like-minded people. Such an incredible place to raise our kids. I can't imagine any better place to raise children. It's got everything that a parent would want. For parents who really are invested in their kids and want to see them raised in a good environment and have opportunities in life and that sort of thing. It's a great place, and I love our mayor and our city council,
Mm-hmm.
who are forward thinking. But I love the approach that we've had of growth, a more strategic growth plan as opposed to just a shotgun approach of let's blow this place out and make it, the next Hoover. It's the customers that we have in our business. I think are a great way to kind of get a snapshot of what Gardendale is like.
Mm-hmm.
And because we have people that we see on almost a daily basis, I mean, it sounds super cliche for me to say it, but I'm going to say it anyway. Our guests feel like family, and our team members feel that. Hopefully, our guests experience that. A lot of them tell us that they do. I mean, they know our team members by name.
Yeah.
Um, I've got people that work for me that stop in the drive. I mean, they'll be taking somebody's order in the drive-through, and the person's obviously upset or emotional, and they'll say, "Hey, do you mind if I just pray with you real quick?" I mean, that's the kind of thing that happens here that may happen other places, but when you get to experience it, and we I'm sure you've heard of the pay it forward stuff where people pull up to the drive-through window and say, "Hey, I want to pay for the person behind me."
Mm.
That happens organically and randomly all the time. I mean, it's not even unusual now when it happens. And it might go for 20 or 30 cars where people are like, "Oh, they paid for mine? Well, I'll pay for the person behind me."
Yeah.
And that just speaks to the caliber of the quality of the people. And, I feel like for me, the things that are most important are faith, family, and friends. And I feel like that's what the majority of people in Gardendale, that's what's important to them. And they take pride in being from Gardendale,
Yeah.
and that's important. There are a lot of people that really live in communities that they may or may not really be involved in or even prideful, that they live there. But there's a lot of civic pride in Gardendale. People are proud to be here. We did the whole sign war thing
I heard
earlier
about
this
that with
year, and
Mr. Dennis, right?
yeah, yeah, and I mean that's just a great picture of. I mean that wasn't about us. I mean that was, Jeff and I go way back. We've been friends for a long time, and that was all just me and him kind of poking fun at each other just as a joke.
Yeah.
But the community rallied around it in a way that blew my mind. I mean, we were seeing this on, all over the country. People were reporting about Gardendale, Alabama, and the sign war. I had people from all over the country that were calling our store saying, "Hey, I just saw this on our local news, from
Wow.
Oregon or wherever."
Yeah.
And that makes for a great community. And community is a word I think that sometimes gets misrepresented. It gets overused a lot.
Mm.
Um, but a community is not a place. It's an experience. It's a feeling that you have. And we feel like even though we didn't move here till 2004, so we've been here for 17 years. But it feels like we've been here our whole life. I feel like people treat us like we've been here our whole life,
Yeah.
like we're locals, and it felt like that from day one. I mean, from the time we moved to Gardendale and opened my business, we were just welcomed with open arms, like we're glad you're here.
Yeah.
And so I can't imagine living anywhere else. It was such an answered prayer for my wife and I when we were praying about where would we love to open a Chick-fil-A restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
Gardendale just answered that. I mean, this is exactly where we wanted to be, the kind of community we wanted to be in. So it's been great.
What is something that you think Gardendale can do better?
The growth strategy of being strategic with growth is important. But I think when we identify businesses that we want to come to Gardendale,
Yeah.
I think we could grease the rails a little bit for them
Mm.
to make sure that we make that process really smooth, and then support those businesses. I mean, we've been overwhelmingly supported ever since we've opened. So
Mm-hmm.
so I'm not necessarily talking about my business, but I'm a big buy local guy
Yeah.
and support local. So we don't go out to eat. outside our community. Very rarely. I just believe that we should support the restaurants that are here. We should buy groceries here. We should, we should do all our shopping here to the extent that we can. And we could certainly improve with having some diversity, with maybe getting some more businesses here that, that would prevent us from having to leave Gardendale. But I also know that that is not an easy thing to do necessarily. You don't just call up Belk and say, "Hey, we'd like for y'all to come build a Belk in Gardendale."
Come on down.
I think a lot of people have the misperception that that's how that works, and that's not at all how that works. But I think we'll get there. I kind of have mixed emotions about growth. From a businessman, from that point of view, obviously, the more people that move to Gardendale, I think it stands to reason that my business will grow and we'll see more sales. From a person that lives in the community, I have mixed emotions about that. I love having a 7-minute drive to work with no traffic. I love, not having to deal with some of the things that come with
There are
growth.
challenges with growth.
There are, and I
Brian
think it's
Knox
easy.
and I were talking about that, about how do you preserve community.
Yeah. And I've experienced that, with Chick-fil-A. I mean, like I said, when we first started, we were kind of a mom and pop regional restaurant, and growth has been great. Our company's been blessed. But you lose something a little bit when you grow, and you have to work hard to keep it. And I think as long as we're intentional about keeping community and keeping that a viable, relevant thing, we'll be fine. But you just have to be intentional about it, because it won't just happen naturally. You'll lose it. It'll happen. It'll just lose it. One day you'll look up and you'll be like, where did my Gardendale go?
Yeah. Well, is there anything that you'd like to close out with before we close out in the podcast?
No. I just appreciate you giving me this opportunity, because it's, I don't get an opportunity to brag on Gardendale very often, but it really is, for us, for our family, for the quality of life that we have, for the people that live here. It really has been a dream come true for us. And, we want to be here the rest of our life and get buried here, and would love to see our kids move here and raise their families here. And I just can't say enough about the caliber of people, the leadership of the city, the business owners that I have relationships with. They're just great people.
Excellent. Well, that's a great way to end it. Thank you for listening to the Your City podcast, and I hope you enjoyed today's conversation with Mike. If you enjoyed the show, you can help us support the show by donating on PayPal, by using the link in the description to help us keep making the show and improving it. There's more that we would like to do with this idea, and we would appreciate any support in helping us achieve our goal of creating better communities, not just for Gardendale, but for other cities as well. We also would like to, again, thank our sponsor, Southern Market, and thank you for listening, and we'll catch you on the next one.